Deep in the forests of Eastern Europe lies a concrete structure that defies explanation. A Nazi bunker, sealed since 1944, that remained untouched for decades until a group of explorers broke its rusted locks in 2003. What they discovered inside challenged everything we understand about reality. The bunker where time itself seemed to freeze. Coffee still steaming in cups. Half-written reports with ink that hadn't dried. And most disturbing of all, wristwatches frozen at exactly 3:27 a.m., November 18, 1944. Not just one watch, every single timepiece in the facility. Today we uncover the chilling mystery of what happened in those underground chambers and why multiple governments have worked to keep it hidden for over 75 years. Before we dive deeper into this reality-defying story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below which country you're watching from. Your support helps us continue investigating history's most disturbing mysteries. The existence of Bunker 17, as it's now known, remained classified until relatively recently. Located deep within what was once Nazi-occupied territory in the Carpathian Mountains, the facility was part of a network of research installations established in the later years of World War II as the Reich grew increasingly desperate for technological breakthroughs. Unlike most bunkers from this period, this particular facility wasn't discovered by Allied forces during their advance. It remained completely untouched, hidden beneath dense forest growth and deliberately obscured from aerial reconnaissance. The first documented entry into the bunker came in 2003, when a team of industrial archaeology enthusiasts from the University of Warsaw were mapping forgotten military structures in the region. Led by Professor Marek Kowalski, the team had been using recently declassified Soviet military maps to locate and document abandoned installations. "We weren't even looking for it specifically," Kowalski later wrote in his controversial paper that was subsequently withdrawn from publication. "We were following coordinates for what we believed was a standard communications bunker. What we found instead was something far more significant and disturbing. The entrance had been concealed by decades of forest growth, with tree roots breaking through concrete and nearly obscuring the heavy steel door. It took the team several hours to clear enough debris to even recognize it as a man-made structure. The door itself presented another challenge, a sophisticated locking mechanism that had rusted shut. It's worth noting that the door wasn't locked from the outside," emphasized Kowalski. "The locking mechanisms had been engaged from within. Whatever happened inside that bunker, someone wanted to make sure it stayed contained." After carefully breaching the entrance with equipment borrowed from local mining operations, Kowalski's team made their way inside, expecting to find yet another abandoned Nazi facility picked clean by Soviet forces decades earlier. What they discovered instead defied explanation. The bunker's interior extended far deeper underground than its modest entrance suggested. At least 5 levels of laboratories, living quarters, and what appeared to be specialized research facilities. But it wasn't the size that stunned the exploration team. It was the condition in which everything had been preserved. "It was as if everyone had simply vanished mid-activity," described Anna Nowak, one of the graduate students present during the initial exploration. "There was no sign of conflict, no evidence of a hasty evacuation. Everything was just abandoned in the middle of use." The scene resembled a macabre wax museum. In the command center, maps were still laid out with tactical markers showing troop positions from November 1944. Communication equipment remained powered on, though obviously non-functional after decades without electricity. Most unsettling were the personal effects: coffee cups with liquid still in them, now reduced to a hardened black residue. Cigarettes and ashtrays that had burned down and stopped precisely at the same moment. Deeper within the facility, the team discovered living quarters where beds remained unmade, with personal items scattered as if the occupants had just stepped out momentarily. Uniforms hung neatly on hooks. Family photographs adorned metal desks. Letters home sat half-written. But it was the scientific sections of the bunker that presented the most perplexing scene. The laboratories contained equipment we couldn't immediately identify, Kowalski noted. Some resembled early particle physics apparatus, others appeared to be medical in nature. But several devices defied any conventional categorization. Most notably, a central chamber on the lowest level contained a massive ring-shaped machine approximately 15 meters in diameter. Notes scattered around the apparatus referred to something called Project Kronos, a name that would later prove significant. Throughout the entire facility, one detail stood out above all others. Every clock and watch had stopped at exactly the same moment, 3:27 a.m. on November 18, 1944. Mechanical watches on the wrists of empty uniforms. The large clock in the command center. Even the timing mechanisms and scientific equipment. All frozen at precisely the same instant. Records found within the administrative section of the bunker provided insights into who had been stationed there. Unlike typical Nazi military installations, Bunker 17 had housed an unusual mix of personnel. Wehrmacht officers providing security, SS officials overseeing operations, and most notably, a team of civilian scientists with specializations ranging from theoretical physics to archaeology. The facility commander was identified as Colonel Heinrich Weber, an SS officer with an atypical background. Before the war, Weber had been a professor of theoretical physics at Heidelberg University, with published works on relativistic mechanics. His presence as a military commander of a research facility was unusual and suggested the exceptional importance of whatever work was being conducted there. More intriguing were the civilian scientists. Among the documents recovered was a personnel roster listing 12 researchers, most with impressive academic credentials. Several names stood out to historians who later reviewed the materials. Dr. Erich Hoffmann, a physicist who had studied under Werner Heisenberg and had been part of Germany's nuclear research program before being mysteriously reassigned in early 1944. Dr. Elsa Schmidt, an archaeologist specializing in ancient European cultures, particularly obscure religious practices predating Christianity. Dr. Johannes Keller, a mathematician whose pre-war papers on temporal mathematics and nonlinear causality had been dismissed as theoretical abstractions with no practical applications. What unified this diverse group of specialists? What project could possibly require expertise spanning such different disciplines? The answer began to emerge from the research journals and reports scattered throughout the facility. According to recovered documents, Project Kronos began in early 1943, after the discovery of an unusual artifact during archaeological excavations near the Externstein Formation in Germany. The artifact, described in Schmidt's notes as a metallic dodecahedron of unknown origin and composition, displayed properties that defied conventional understanding. The object reportedly exhibited temporal inconsistency. Measurements taken of the same dimensions would yield different results depending on when they were taken. More disturbing were observations that organic matter placed in proximity to the artifact would experience accelerated or decelerated decay, depending on positioning. After initial studies conducted in Berlin raised alarm among senior Nazi leadership, the research was relocated to the remote bunker facility and designated as highest priority. The scientific team was assembled with the explicit goal of weaponizing whatever property the artifact possessed. Colonel Weber's personal journal, recovered from his office, revealed the true ambitions behind Project Kronos. The Führer himself has taken interest in our work. If we succeed in controlling the temporal field effects, we will gain the ultimate strategic advantage, the ability to manipulate time itself in localized areas. Imagine, enemy formations frozen in time while our forces move freely around them. Or accelerating time within enemy territory so that their supplies deteriorate in days rather than months. By late 1944, as Allied forces advanced and Germany's conventional military options narrowed, pressure intensified on the Kronos team to produce results. Weber's final journal entries betray increasing desperation. Berlin demands a demonstration within the week. The power requirements for the containment field have been reduced, but stabilizing the effect remains problematic. Dr. Keller believes the mathematical models are sound, but scaling from small objects to a field large enough for tactical deployment introduces variables we cannot fully predict. The final entry, dated November 17, 1944, ends ominously, full-scale test scheduled for 0300 hours. All non-essential personnel evacuated to minimum safe distance. If successful, we will have changed the course of the war. If not, the entry stops mid-sentence. What exactly happened at 3:27 a.m. on November 18, 1944? The evidence suggests that the Kronos team attempted their full-scale test, an experiment to create a temporally manipulated field larger than any they had previously achieved. Technical notes found in the main laboratory indicate they had been working with progressively larger fields, successfully slowing time within contained areas up to 2 meters in diameter. The November 18 test was meant to encompass the entire central chamber, a space roughly 20 meters across. The experimental apparatus itself centered around the large ring structure, with the artifact suspended in its center. Power cables as thick as a man's arm connected the ring to multiple generators in an adjacent room. Monitoring equipment formed a perimeter around the chamber, with blast shields suggesting the researchers were well aware of the risks. Based on equipment readings that remained frozen on various gauges and instruments, Something catastrophic occurred when the device was activated. Power levels spiked far beyond predicted parameters. Radiation of an unspecified type was detected at levels that literally pinned the needles of measuring devices against their maximum stops. Most telling was a final automated reading from a seismograph in the monitoring room, designed to detect structural stresses on the bunker itself. The needle had torn through the paper with a violent movement before stopping completely, the exact moment all other timepieces in the facility froze. Yet despite indications of a catastrophic energy release, the bunker showed no signs of physical damage. No fire. No structural collapse. No evidence of conventional disaster. Just the sudden absence of all personnel and the complete cessation of time's normal flow. The most haunting aspect of Bunker 17 is not what was found inside, but what wasn't any trace of the people who had occupied it. Approximately 47 individuals had been stationed there according to the duty roster, including security personnel, researchers, and support staff. None of their remains were discovered. It wasn't that they had died and their bodies were there, emphasized Kowalski. There was simply no trace of them at all. No bodies. No blood. Nothing to suggest what had physically happened to 47 human beings. Several theories have been proposed to explain their disappearance. The simplest explanation, that they evacuated before something went wrong, contradicts the evidence of activities interrupted mid-action throughout the facility. Coffee cups still full. Personal belongings left behind. Half-written letters. Everything pointed to a sudden event, not a planned evacuation. Another theory suggests that whatever temporal effect was created somehow displaced the personnel, either sending them forward or backward in time while leaving the physical structure of the bunker intact. Perhaps most disturbing is the hypothesis that they might exist in some kind of temporal stasis, neither fully present in our time stream nor completely absent from it, caught in what Kowalski termed a temporal limbo. This last theory gained unexpected support in 2005, when digital photographs taken during the initial exploration revealed anomalies that were not visible to the naked eye. Several images, when enhanced, showed what appeared to be human-shaped distortions in the air, transparent outlines of figures frozen in various positions throughout the facility. It was as if they were still there, Nowak later reported, but vibrating at a frequency just beyond normal perception. Visible to the camera's digital sensor but not to the human eye. Within days of Kowalski's team reporting their discovery to academic authorities, the site was cordoned off by a joint Polish-German governmental task force. All members of the original exploration team were detained, debriefed, and required to sign non-disclosure agreements under threat of prosecution for revealing information pertinent to national security. The official explanation provided to Kowalski was that they had stumbled upon an environmental hazard, residual chemical or radiological contamination from Nazi experiments that required specialized containment. The bunker was sealed with concrete and the area designated a restricted zone under environmental protection laws. This might have been the end of the story, had Kowalski not become increasingly troubled by the extreme response to what was officially deemed just another abandoned military facility. His attempts to publish an academic paper on the archaeological significance of the site were blocked. His request to test samples he had collected before the government seizure was denied. In 2008, 5 years after the discovery, Kowalski broke his silence and shared his findings with an investigative journalist from Der Spiegel. 3 days before the planned publication of the story, the journalist's apartment was broken into and all his research materials were stolen. The article never appeared. Kowalski himself reported being followed and having his communications monitored. His academic position became increasingly precarious as mysterious complaints emerged about his teaching and research methodologies. "They're trying to discredit me rather than address what we found," he wrote in a private letter to Nowak that was later made public after his disappearance in 2011. But the question remains, why such an extreme response to an archaeological discovery? What are they hiding about what happened in that bunker? The most scientifically challenging aspects of the Bunker 17 discovery were the documented temporal anomalies that persisted decades after whatever incident occurred there. During their brief exploration before government intervention, Kowalski's team recorded several phenomena that defied conventional physics. Chronometers and watches brought into certain areas of the facility, particularly the central chamber, would desynchronize from timepieces in other areas. A watch might show that 5 minutes had passed while in another section of the bunker. A similar watch would record only 1 minute. Organic samples placed in the central chamber exhibited altered decay rates. An apple left near the ring apparatus showed no signs of oxidation after 24 hours, while control samples elsewhere deteriorated normally. Most dramatically, digital video recorded in the lowest-level laboratories displayed frame rate inconsistencies that couldn't be attributed to equipment malfunctions. Footage appeared to speed up and slow down in rhythmic patterns that, when analyzed, corresponded to complex mathematical sequences found in Keller's notes. Dr. Sofia Martinez, a theoretical physicist who reviewed some of the data before it was classified, described the findings as consistent with localized temporal distortion, as if time itself flows differently within specific areas of the structure. If the data is accurate, Martinez wrote in a confidential assessment that was later leaked, it suggests the team at Bunker 17 achieved something previously thought impossible: the artificial manipulation of temporal mechanics. The implications extend far beyond historical curiosity. This would represent a fundamental breakthrough in our understanding of physics. While official channels remained silent about Bunker 17, local accounts from the area near the facility provided compelling supplementary evidence that something truly unusual had occurred there. The nearest village, approximately 7 kilometers from the bunker site, had been occupied by both Nazi and later Soviet forces during and after the war. Elderly residents interviewed by Nowak before the government shutdown recalled strange phenomena around the time of the incident. Marta Wisniewski, who had been a young girl in 1944, described waking in the middle of the night to a light that was not light, darkness that glowed, emanating from the direction of the forest where the bunker was located. More strikingly, she and other villagers reported that all timepieces in the village stopped simultaneously, the same 3:27 a.m. freeze documented inside the facility. The watches began working again after a few hours, Wisniewski recounted. But the big clock in the church tower never worked properly afterward. Sometimes it would run backward for hours before correcting itself. Another resident, Joseph Bannock, had been part of a local resistance cell monitoring Nazi movements in the area. According to records he kept, the Wehrmacht security detail for the bunker was rotated every 2 weeks, except for the final detachment. They arrived in early November 1944, but no replacement unit ever came. The truck that made regular supply deliveries stopped coming as well. We thought at first they had simply abandoned the facility as Soviet forces approached. Now I wonder if anyone was left to evacuate. Perhaps most chilling were accounts from Soviet soldiers who were part of the forces that swept through the area in early 1945. According to military archives obtained by Kowalski before access was restricted, a Soviet reconnaissance unit reported finding the bunker entrance but made no attempt to enter after several soldiers experienced temporal sickness when approaching the doors. A translated excerpt from their report reads, "Men approaching within 10 meters began experiencing disorientation. Comrade Petrov reported his watch running at accelerated speed, traversing 12 hours in what he experienced as 20 minutes. 2 others reported inverse effects, feeling as if hours had passed while only minutes registered on timepieces. Site deemed hazardous. Recommended containment rather than exploration." The Soviet military consequently established a restricted perimeter and listed the area as contaminated by chemical agents, a designation that remained in military maps until the fall of the USSR. In the years since the discovery and subsequent classification of Bunker 17, various scientific theories have been proposed to explain the observed phenomena, ranging from the conventional to the revolutionary. The most conservative explanation suggests that the Nazi researchers were experimenting with radioactive materials, possibly elements with unusual half-life properties that affected the measuring instruments in ways that merely appeared to be temporal in nature. This theory, however, fails to account for the synchronized stopping of mechanical watches throughout the facility or the disappearance of personnel. A more complex hypothesis proposes that the team may have inadvertently created a temporal bubble, a field where time's passage became detached from the normal flow of the universe around it. Within this bubble, time might have essentially stopped for the occupants while decades passed in the outside world. Theoretical physicist Alan Thornton, who reviewed some of the data before classification, proposed that the Kronos team may have accessed what modern string theory describes as closed time-like curves, theoretical pathways that loop back on themselves through spacetime. If they somehow managed to create a stable CTC, the implications would be staggering, Thornton wrote in a paper that carefully avoided direct reference to Bunker 17. An object or person caught in such a curve would experience time very differently than external observers. From their perspective, time might continue normally, while appearing frozen to those outside the curve. This theory gained additional credibility when researchers noticed that the geometric arrangement of equipment in the central chamber closely resembled theoretical diagrams for temporal manipulation published in obscure physics journals in the 2010s, as if the Nazi scientists had somehow anticipated concepts that mainstream physics wouldn't develop for another 70 years. The official stance of both German and Polish governments remains that Bunker 17 was simply another abandoned Nazi facility, with any unusual features attributed to conventional hazards that have been properly contained. However, satellite imagery analysis reveals ongoing activity at the site. High-resolution photographs show regular visits by unmarked vehicles and periodic equipment deliveries, suggesting that whatever was found there continues to be of significant interest to authorities. In 2019, a whistleblower claiming to be part of the containment team responsible for monitoring the bunker shared documents indicating that temporal anomalies at the site have not diminished over time but have actually intensified in regular cycles. According to these leaked reports, the strength of temporal distortion around the facility peaks every 27 days, precisely the same interval mentioned in Keller's mathematical models for what he termed temporal resonance. Most recently, in 2022, automated monitoring equipment placed around the perimeter reportedly registered a momentary temporal normalization, a 27-second window during which all chronometers within the containment zone synchronized with the outside world before reverting to their anomalous behavior. During this brief window, security cameras allegedly captured something extraordinary, a single human figure visible in the central chamber, moving slightly before vanishing again as the temporal distortion reasserted itself. If authenticated, this observation would validate the most disturbing theory about Bunker 17, that the personnel never left. They remain caught in a moment of time, occasionally slipping back into phase with our temporal reality during these windows of synchronization. Beyond the historical mystery and scientific curiosity, the case of Bunker 17 raises profound philosophical questions about the nature of time itself. If the Nazi scientists truly discovered a method to manipulate temporal mechanics, what does this tell us about time as we understand it? Is time truly linear, flowing in one direction, or is this merely how we perceive a more complex multidimensional reality? More unsettling is the question of fate for those trapped in the incident. If they exist in a state of temporal suspension, are they conscious? Do they experience their condition? Or are they frozen not just in time but in awareness as well, caught in an eternal moment neither living nor dead in any conventional sense? The ethical implications extend to current containment efforts as well. If there's even a remote possibility that personnel remain trapped in some form of temporal stasis, is there a moral obligation to attempt rescue? Or would interfering with whatever delicate equilibrium exists risk releasing forces beyond our control? These questions remain unanswered as authorities continue to officially deny the true nature of what was discovered in that remote forest bunker. The forgotten bunker where time stopped in 1944 represents one of the most profound mysteries of World War II, a case where Nazi scientific ambition may have crossed boundaries of physics that we are only beginning to understand today. While official denials continue and access remains restricted, the evidence gathered before classification suggests that something truly extraordinary occurred in those underground chambers. Whether it was a momentary success in manipulating the fundamental forces of our universe, or a catastrophic failure that created an enduring temporal anomaly, the implications challenge our understanding of reality itself. The ultimate fate of those present during the incident remains unknown. Are they truly gone, disintegrated in some catastrophic reaction? Do they exist in some other temporal plane? Or are they still there, frozen in a moment from 1944, occasionally slipping into synchronization with our time stream during brief windows when the barriers between then and now grow thin? Perhaps most chilling is the possibility that they remain conscious of their fate, aware but unable to interact with a world that has moved on without them, watching as occasional explorers enter their frozen reality before disappearing back into the normal flow of time. As governments continue to monitor the site and classify information about its true nature, we can only wonder what other secrets remain buried in the shadows of history, experiments and discoveries too dangerous or profound for public knowledge. If you found this exploration into one of history's most disturbing temporal mysteries interesting, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to comment below letting us know which country you're watching from. Your support helps us continue bringing these hidden historical enigmas to light. Until next time, remember, not all places exist fully in our present. Some remain caught between seconds, holding their secrets in a moment that never ends.